Okay, good evening. Thank you all for being here. We just had some we had this all planned out. We're like, oh, we're going to start it exactly at 6, but of course, little technical issues. Again, thank you everybody for being here. Just a few little housekeeping things before we do our introductions here. We expect that this will be a 45-minute presentation with time for Q&A after. If people have questions throughout the presentation, we put up some QR codes, and I'll also put one up during the presentation. If you want to take that, you could write in your question as well, and we'll take it at the end. We're going to be doing the slideshow, but don't worry about if there's a slide that's interesting about taking pictures of the slide. We will have at the end another QR code, and you can just download the presentation and take it home with you. So you can have it as a PDF, so don't worry about that. Just be able to pay attention to it. I think that's about it for housekeeping. So I will go ahead and get started with this today. Again, thank you everybody. I'm looking out and seeing some distinguished guests here. I think there's quite a few people who this will be interesting to, and quite a few people who have been stakeholders on this even in the past. And now I really do believe that this is the time for what we're going to be talking about. Today speaking will be myself and Josh Cook. We are two of the founders, along with Michael Shue here, of the Trade Council of the Marianas, and we're the ones hosting this today. What we'll be doing, I'll just go through real quick before I introduce us, just so that you know what it is that we'll be looking at. So first, we're just going to do a little introduction of ourselves very quickly, and Josh and I will be switching back and forth as we go. I'm going to start out talking about the opportunity that we have and the tools at our disposal. Josh is going to talk a little bit about the big opportunity and the market that's in front of us. Then I'm going to discuss the Free Trade Zone Authority, which is what we are here to talk about today. And then Josh is going to talk about our organization. So maybe some of this doesn't make a lot of sense right at this minute, but it will. And then right after that, we'll have the Q&A, so just so that you get some idea of where we're going. So again, if you want to submit questions, if you want to just pop your phone out now and look, it's just a little form. You can write it down, and we will take those questions as we move forward. Otherwise, if you have questions, obviously during the Q&A period, we can answer those just live. So as an introduction, we are the Trade Council of the Marianas. We are a nonprofit here in CNMI. And we are a chamber of commerce for the businesses that we are going to be bringing in under the Free Trade Zone Authority. And so our charter and our goal is promoting business, commercial, and economic interests in the CNMI, advising, consulting with, and providing services to public and private entities in the interest of economic diversification and foreign investment. So we're really focused on bringing outside businesses in, bringing money that's outside in. That's our goal. I'm Vin Armani. I think I know most of you here, so I won't spend a long time on introductions, but I'm a software developer, software entrepreneur. My companies here are Badger LLC, which I'm the founder of, and we run Saipan Team. We've been focused for the last year on getting more businesses from outside in. And Marianas Corp is a company recently founded. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of that company and one of the founders. Josh is going to introduce himself a little bit. Do you want to give a little introduction, Josh?
Yeah. For those of you who don't know me, I've been here for almost 4 years now, and it's been a pleasure to get to know the local people, and I've had an opportunity to work with government stakeholders during this time. And I'm fortunate enough to work closely with Secretary of Finance and Secretary of Commerce and other cabinet members in helping implement technology, implement systems, change management, and project management. So that's what my team and I do. And really, really grateful for your time, and we're going to make the most of it today.
So as I said, I'm a software entrepreneur. I came here 5 years ago, so this will be my 5th year here in CNMI, and I love it. I'm gonna stay. It's been a wonderful place to do business, and that in and of itself has been surprising to me and has raised the question, if I like it so much, and I'm not really all that different than a lot of people that I've worked with over the years in my industry, why is this place just not crawling with people like me? Why is this not a tech hub full of US tech entrepreneurs who are coming out here and living here? Because you can. I'm the proof that it can take place. And so this has sent me really on a bit of a journey. And those of you who have interacted with me over the years that I've been looking at this know that this has always been my thing, is I've said, oh, we can bring tech businesses here, and I know we can because I'm one of them. And so over the last year, that question, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm an engineer, so like when a problem comes up that I can't figure out the answer to, I'm like a dog with a bone. And so Josh is the same. We've been on this journey. Michael has been a help in this whole 5 years and has really put a lot of this into perspective as someone who's lived here his whole life. And so we do believe that we have found the set of incentives that I guess you could call really like the secret sauce, that recipe to where if you get it right, you build it and they will come. And that's what we want to talk about today. But before we talk about the specific recipe, I want to try to put this into a little bit of perspective of what it is that we're talking about. So to take it back a little bit, just so that it's simplified and we can all kind of see what we're talking about. About a year and a half ago, I was in Palau, and listening to a speech from the president, he said something very interesting when talking about their natural resources. He said, our sovereignty is our greatest resource. So the fact that they have the capability to manipulate their legal code, and they're a small, nimble place, to be able to attract different types of businesses, he said, it's our sovereignty is our greatest resource. And it's very much the same thing here. And so this is our big tool, is our sovereignty. The covenant is something totally unique, and Josh is going to get into a lot of that. But we really need to start thinking in that way. And so the question is, how do we leverage the tools at our disposal? How do we leverage that sovereignty? And our goal, what we've said here, is to bring in $1 billion per year to the CNMI government in taxes. And that seems like a very big number, but one, it's a good number because it's a nice round number. But two, let's not get daunted by this idea. It's also a very reachable number. To put it in perspective, $1 billion is the average gross revenue of one Walmart store in the United States. So the average Walmart store in 1 year brings in $1 billion. So I think as a commonwealth that's sovereign, that has a unique situation, that has all of the tools at its disposal, and a lot of the people who wield those tools are in the room today, I think that we can bring in as much money to the CNMI government as is brought into one Walmart in Paducah, Kentucky. I'm pretty sure we can do it. So what we're going to talk about is an economic engine. We're going to present to you a new economic engine for CNMI. And so I'm not going to go deep into this term, but I'm going to give you an idea of what these economic engines are, and then you can probably figure it out. So California, its economic engine is entertainment in the south and technology in the north. In New York, it's finance. In Saudi Arabia, it's oil. In Philippines, they have one of the most interesting ones in the world, overseas Filipino workers. We're very, very familiar with that, but that is their economic engine of their country, and as a matter of fact, their government supports it greatly. They have entire agencies to support overseas Filipino workers. So an economic engine, in short, is the means by which, to make it real easy, you take money that's outside of your country and you turn it into money that's inside your country. That's it. So economics, the word economics comes from the Greek oikonomia, and that means the management of a household. And so for many of us, like me, I'm the economic engine of my household, right? I'm the breadwinner. I'm the one who takes the money that's outside the house and I bring it inside the house. We can decide what we do with it when it's inside the house. But the key is, what is the engine that takes it from outside and brings it inside? And so we have two, obviously, right now. Tourism is one, right? Tourists earn their money outside, and they get on a plane with their money or with their credit card, and they come here and they turn that into money inside CNMI. Right? So that's our first economic engine. The second economic engine is grants. So it's the money that's coming mostly from the federal government outside the country and is coming inside the country. So those are our two economic engines. And what we're suggesting and what we're going to show you today is that we actually have the tools at our disposal without passing another law, without doing anything except some minor support from people here to introduce one of the greatest economic engines and one of the most powerful ones that's used throughout the world by countries that have become some of the most wealthy countries in the last, let's say, 2-3 decades. Let's talk about what we know and the limitations also of our current economic engines. Obviously, tourism, it's a well-established and understood industry here. It's pretty much all we talk about when we talk about our economic engine. But, as we've seen over the last 5 years, highly dependent on global economic, political, and even health factors. We hadn't really thought about health factors, right, until 2020, but we learned. But of course, economic, we have no control over what the exchange rate of the US dollar is to the Japanese yen, and that's why we don't have Japanese tourists. Or political, we have no control over what the President of the United States thinks about the President of China. But as we've seen, that makes a big difference on whether or not we're going to have Chinese tourism. And we have no control over those factors, so we need some things to put it back into our control. The other big thing is about scale. There's a ceiling on the scale of how much money we can get from tourism, right? There's no way that we can have 1 million tourists a month here. It's not going to work, right? There's a ceiling. So we need to be, when we're shooting for an economic engine, we need to be thinking about an economic engine that doesn't have that ceiling. And we need to be looking, are there economic engines that don't have that ceiling? Grants, obviously, very reliable, very stable, and they're due to us because of the covenant, right? It's baked right in, it's part of the package. But one of the biggest things that we run into is there's restrictions on how the funds can be spent, right? So yeah, you may get a $100 million grant, but if you need $100 million to fix a road and that grant's not for fixing a road, you can't use that $100 million to fix a road. So the other thing we want to look at is what are the things that where we can have control over how it's actually spent, right? And of course, again, there's a ceiling on it. Even if we were to get all of the grants possible, there's a cap. There's a limit on that. And it's at that cap is out of our control. And so one of the things to understand about what we're going to present today is that this is not an either-or engine. This is a both-and engine. So by moving forward with this economic engine that we're going to present to you, it's not going to interfere with the grants. Let's go and get all the grants. It's not going to interfere with the tourism. Let's do all the tourism. Let's not do either or, let's do them all. And so what we're going to present to you, the basic concept is tax residency. And this is getting businesses that are currently outside, that are paying their taxes somewhere else, to instead decide that they want to be here and pay their taxes to the CNMI government. And the question is, how do we do that? What are the set of incentives that we use to get them here? There's a lot of popular tax domiciles. These are the most popular ones, some of them right now. Many countries are competing on this. This is the big hot thing that countries are competing on. I've got the list there. At the bottom, I've got the state that's working the hardest, which is Wyoming right now. But do you really want to go live in Wyoming as opposed to living in Saipan? I certainly don't. And at the top, I have probably the most important one in the entire world right now, which is United Arab Emirates. And they've really done this better than anybody else. And if you look at where technology companies are that are starting up, you're going to see a lot of them in Dubai, a lot of them in Abu Dhabi. So this is a big question. So this is what to have in mind as we go through, and this is the question we're going to answer. How do we attract companies that already exist, they already have revenue, they already pay taxes on their revenue to some other jurisdiction, such as the US, they're already paying the IRS every year. How do we get them to choose to source their revenue and pay their taxes here in CNMI? And then the secondary question is, how do we attract enough of those, or high earning enough, that the total taxes paid to CNMI is $1 billion a year? Okay, so this is the framework that we're going to talk about today. We've got control of our corporate tax rates. These are the two tools. These are what's at our disposal, the big things that we have. So we have control of corporate tax rates in a way that is really unheard of. In all of these other domiciles, they really don't have the capability to do what we have. with two programs. The qualifying certificate program, and we actually have folks in here from companies that have a qualifying certificate. I think we know about that. We know how that works. And the free trade zone license. Most of us have no idea what this is, but it is our other tool, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, tax domicile, we're going to talk about the free trade zone license. Josh is going to talk about because you may be asking, where are these businesses? How big is this? What is the opportunity here? So Josh is going to tell you, give you some history of how this breaks down and where we're at now with this concept.
So 1 billion might seem like an astronomical number, right? When we're just worried about, getting our economy back into gear, all right? We need to be shooting for the big fish, as well as taking advantage of whatever opportunities we can take advantage of that might be smaller, all right? So again, this is not either or, this is both. And by the end of this few minutes that I have with you, I really hope that my goal is to change this from being something that you see as being possible to something that is inevitable. If we can get the incentives right. That's the caveat. We have to get the incentives right in order for this to work. But if we get the incentives right, we can do it with a $0 budget. So first I'm going to share, there's a few pieces to this perfect storm, you could say, all right? And the first piece is understanding that these incentives work and how well they work. And we can see that by looking at Ireland. When they reduced their corporate tax rate down to 12.5%, within 5 years, they had doubled their corporate tax revenue. Okay, we're gonna go into those numbers. We'll also look at how we know that many hundreds of businesses are just waiting for the CNMI to get these incentives right. And then last of all, which I think is worth repeating, we cannot take for granted the power of the covenant and this unique stamp of approval from the US, because then we can operate within the US but have the autonomy and sovereignty to create the incentives. And in the Free Trade Zone Act, at the time, they used the power of the covenant to create new incentives, and it's up to us to implement them, okay? So Ireland, 2002, just 2 years after this law that we're gonna talk about passed, Ireland dropped their tax rate to 12.5%, okay? Now, we know that, just as a sidebar, for those of you who don't operate a business here, you've probably heard that CNMI is a great place it has a lot of tax benefits. And that is true for personal income taxes, but it's not necessarily true for businesses because of the BGRT. The BGRT disincentivizes businesses from coming to the CNMI, but we're gonna get into free trade zone license can actually help businesses. We can remove the BGRT, still have them pay taxes, okay? So we'll get into that. So let's look at the numbers. As soon as Ireland did this, these were their numbers in the billions. These are the revenues that they received. The first year, down to the 5th year, they nearly doubled their corporate tax revenue, okay? So this is what it looks like at an accumulative level. This is not year over year, all right? It's all compared to 2002. So when you go down 3 years later, they were receiving 50% more tax revenue than they did the year that they implemented this. And then within 5 years, they were making double what they were when they implemented it. So in 5 years, can you imagine the benefit of doubling our tax revenues? Now, this is not an apples to apples comparison, obviously. The point that is illustrated here is that when the incentives are right, it takes care of itself, okay? So the other thing to keep in mind is, at the time, $4.4 billion. Now, I adjusted all of this. It was in euros. We adjusted it based on historical exchange rates, but now it's in dollars so that we can think of it in terms of US dollars. The buying power of that 4.4 billion was actually more like $7 billion when you adjust for inflation. So they started receiving $7 billion more each year after they implemented this, within 5 years of implementing a new tax rate. Okay, so we know that it works. And now, 22 years later, 85% of their corporate tax revenue comes from foreign companies, primarily US companies, which is that 85% slice of that pie from foreign companies is worth $24 billion to them. Now, the good news for CNMI is Apple set aside $8.8 billion for their taxes in Ireland last year. And they lost a lawsuit, which is going to cost them $13.3 billion. I'm pretty sure Apple would love to pay CNMI $2 billion instead of paying Ireland $8.8 billion. Just a hunch, right? Now, it's easier said than done, but the point is when the incentives are there, it will begin to work itself out, all right? So what is preventing the CNMI from having this financial prosperity that Ireland is seeing? The answer is offering the right incentives in a scalable and sustainable way. All right, it needs to be a sustainable model. We don't want to just give away. Now, this ability to do a tax rebate is CNMI's #1 export. And it has the potential to scale infinitely. We just need to do it responsibly. So the good news is that these incentives are already built into the Free Trade Zone Act of 2000. And Vin's going to get into that in a few minutes here. So I just wanted to do one last slide about Ireland that I think illustrates the point and summarizes the point in a great way. If Ireland can attract that much money, now I'm sure there's other good things about going to Ireland, but we've been meeting with the company regularly every 2 weeks. They went to Ireland in 2022 or 2023. Actually, they were there for a few years. Last year they backed out because the administrative burden of going to Ireland was more expensive than the savings they would have in tax savings. And it's because of all of those X's that you see. CNMI doesn't have that same administrative burden. So you can see that when the incentives are right, now it's up to us to make sure that 9% effective corporate tax rate, or whatever it is, right? That's just an example. It could be 10.5%, it could be 5%, which can be offered in a free trade zone license. We just need those incentives accessible to businesses. They need to be accessible and scalable. Okay, so not to mention my favorite one at the bottom, the Pacific Island people, culture, and climate. Ireland gets super cold and snowy. And they even mentioned that to us, that Ireland's beautiful in the springtime, but it gets cold and windy for the rest of the year. CNMI, obviously, we have so much to offer, more than just the weather, but I would say even more so the people and the culture. So we've talked about Ireland, and we understand how the incentives drive the demand, okay? Now we're going to talk just a little bit about how we know that there's hundreds of businesses waiting to come, okay? It's because we are meeting with them. We are talking to them. We've had dozens and dozens of conversations. We've met with leaders of networks of businesses that are ready to come. They see the CNMI as the most unique opportunity that they've ever seen, and they do this all over the world, right? So it's here. And not only that, without the tax benefits, we're still getting businesses coming here. I've had 2 people mention to me a company that was based in Seattle, and they moved here because they saw a significant increase in profits by moving here. That was without a special tax benefit. They just moved here anyway. Imagine if they could move here and benefit from all of those things, including lower taxes for their company. How many more businesses would come, right? So we know there's demand. There's also another really amazing opportunity that is possible because of the covenant. Again, we can set up incentives for ambassadors to go share this message. Again, the question is, how do we do this with a $0 budget? Again, the answer is incentives. If we incentivize ambassadors to go out and share the message and to do the work of helping businesses go through the process of getting the license, to coming to CNMI and having a seamless and wonderful experience, then this, again, it will start to work itself out. The incentives will drive the supply to us, okay? So digital nomads is another great one, and Vin mentioned this, right? That there are thousands, tens of thousands of digital nomads in the world. And the one thing, the lifestyle here would attract them. The taxes currently do not. But if we can align the incentives and structure the incentives correctly, using the free trade zone authority with the trade zone authority and board will implement these incentives correctly, we will be inviting them. This guy, he's not even like the #1 nomad, but within 3 months of posting this video, he had 130,000 views, right? There are hundreds of digital nomad influencers and communities, all right? This is just one area. And so the point is that the possibility of reaching 1 billion it's not just a possibility. We are confident it's an inevitability if the incentives are right. Okay, so this is another one. They have 38,000 members in their nomad group. All right, this is just a few that I pulled off of Google. I didn't even really do that much research. Okay, so last thing that I want to point out is some of the powers of the covenant that might be overlooked or that we're not fully leveraging. All right. Now we obviously are talking about taxes and using the tax rebate as our #1 export. We also, many of us in this room are familiar with the Jones Act exemption. We won't be going too much into that today because that's actually not the key to the free trade zone. It's just one of the benefits. And we also have some other things we'll get into here in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to move over this. We can revisit this in the Q&A. This is the last topic that I'll really talk about before I hand it back over to Vin. The H-1B visa is just one example of the power that we have and the policies that we have here in the CNMI, okay? And to illustrate how valuable this is to companies, I'm gonna dive into companies in the States that are applying for these visas, and then they're not getting all of the workers that they wanted to through the H-1B program. And there's roughly, I'll get into the numbers here in a second, okay? So diving into, they have a database that you can go look at. So this is all like publicly available information. In 2023, 480,000 applications were submitted, okay? There's the cap, and then there's cap exempt visas, okay? So they reached the cap, the US reached its cap, and then they have some cap exempt visas. But in the end, more than half of those who registered were denied because they hit the cap or they were not cap exempt. Okay, so if we dive into those numbers even more, how many of those would apply to the CNMI? How many of those people could have come to the CNMI instead? Now, we don't want this to be flooded with 250,000 people. Okay, that's not the point, and I'll get into the numbers in a minute. The point is the sheer volume of opportunity is here. Okay, so when I sorted all of those by just like a tech industry, workers that could work remotely, the number, it was 72% of all the visas were going to these 3 industries of like 30 different industries. 72% of them go to these. And if you look at the 280,000, it's likely, based on these numbers, that 200,000 people that were tech workers that could have come to the CNMI with an uncapped H-1B visa program. 200,000 of them could have been remote workers. Right? I don't know exactly. Maybe it was half that number, but still, we're dealing with massive opportunity here. So the reason why that's a massive opportunity, let's just look at the average value of the average wage of H-1B visa workers is between $100,000 and $130,000 a year, at least in the US, okay? Now, let's say 1,000 of these H-1B visa workers came to the CNMI. That would be $100 million of cash flowing through our economy. And then you can imagine the cash flow into businesses, them paying income tax, BGRTs, So maybe some of that goes back to their home country, but a lot of it's gonna stay here in the CNMI. That's with 1,000 workers. If our population is, let's say we did it, I'm just throwing out numbers here. We'll have to talk about the infrastructure needed to do this, but if we had 10,000 of them, that right there is $1 billion of cash flowing into the economy. So the opportunity is there, and that's like 5% of the H-1B visas that were rejected before, right? Okay, so I'm gonna finish up here so we can see the opportunity. This is the database. You can see some of these companies like Meta, they have 4,000. It's likely that they were denied 3,000 or 4,000. So they had 4,000 to 5,000 that were accepted, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 of their applications got denied. What if they came here instead and worked remotely for Meta? That opportunity by itself would totally change our economy. Just that one company. Okay, so the last thing is we're working with our delegate, Kim Hines, and her office, and they are extremely supportive, and we're gonna do everything that we can to support her office in extending this cap beyond 2029, which is the original deadline. So in closing my remarks on this section, the point is that the sovereignty of the provided by the covenant allows us to create the incentives necessary. And the Free Trade Zone Act created those incentives. So now let's get into what is the Free Trade Zone Act? What are those incentives? Okay? This is inevitable if we just structure it the way that it was meant to be structured in the Act. Okay? I'm gonna turn it over to Vin.
Okay, so now everybody's like, well, okay, so all right, we're ready. What's the Free Trade Zone Authority? So, right. So I'm gonna blaze through this because this law, in looking at it, and I'm shocked. It's weird that it was like hiding in plain sight, and that even on our little journey through all of this, that it like popped out, and I hadn't even realized that this is what it was. But this thing is a superpower. It's a very simple law. It's very easy to read. It was very well done. It was introduced in 2000 by Diego Benavente. Actually, he was the one who introduced it. And so I'm going to blaze through the parts of it, and we'll get a good idea of what this thing is. I do just want to read this because I think it's very important. Some people have heard of the Free Trade Zone Act, but I think a lot of people think that this is supposed to be about like manufacturing, and that it's maybe something like a leftover from the garment industry times, or maybe we're going to bring in some industry or something like that, manufacturing industry. I just want to read this because it is something left over from the garment industry times, but maybe not what you think. So I'm just going to read the whole thing. This is the findings and purpose of the law itself, so that we know what it was they were trying to do. The legislature finds that it's in the best interest of the Commonwealth to establish free trade zones as an economic development tool to encourage the establishment of new business, industrial, and commercial activities in order to diversify the Commonwealth economy. Two industries, this is the year 2000 they're writing this, tourism and garment manufacturing constitute the current economic base of the CNMI. As recent events, including the prolonged economic downturn in Asia, have demonstrated, this economy is extremely vulnerable to forces outside of the CNMI's control, what we talked about before. The legislature further finds that it is in the best interest of the people of the Commonwealth to take aggressive actions to broaden the CNMI's economic base through diversification. The legislature further finds that the types of businesses, industrial and commercial activity, that are in the best long-term interests of the people of the CNMI are those that require significant capital investment, are low labor intensive, have negligible impact on the environment, and are compatible with tourism. And then they say what types of businesses are they interested in. Illustrative examples of such types of desirable business activities would be production of computer hardware and software, licensing and distribution of intellectual property. This goes back to California. Both of those are intellectual property. Entertainment, right, it's copyrights, and the technology companies is patents. So they were saying that. Computer programming services, that's what I did, software development. Database storage and retrieval, financial and trade-related services. So these are all the types of things that you could do remotely. They say these examples are illustrative only, not limited. Such businesses will attract skilled and highly paid employees, as Josh was talking about, and will provide meaningful training opportunities for the citizens of CNMI. That's a big thing that we want to touch on. The Commonwealth's leading industry will remain tourism, So businesses in the free trade zones must not cloud the air, foul the beaches, or contaminate the aquifer. So this is great, and we're looking at this, and we should be like, well, why didn't this happen? And I'm going to tell you, I can tell you right now why this didn't happen. Some things fail, and they don't happen because they're bad ideas. But there's a lot of things that end up not happening because they're ahead of their time. And this is one that's ahead of its time. I was in the tech industry in the year 2000. It's been 27 years I've been in the tech industry. I was young in it at that time. There's no way that a US business that did any of these things could have come here at that time. Just because of the way that you needed to be near your servers, you needed to do all of that. Probably the soonest that this could have taken place was 2006, when Amazon Web Services launched and you had the cloud revolution. Now, totally possible. But in the interim, between 2001 and now, or in 2005 or 6, when this could have started to happen, and there are some people here who were here at the time and involved, you can tell me, I think that probably they had said, maybe this isn't possible. And so this was just an idea that was far, far, far ahead of its time, but it's absolutely spot on. This is from 2002. Basically, this is what they were relying upon. There's a little ellipsis up here, kind of at the end of the 4th sentence or whatever. There was a study that was done in 1999 that basically said, your garment industry is gone. It's going to leave. And it did. By 2002, this is the Saipan Tribune talking about thousands of jobs leaving. And people concerned and trying to build it back up, but the thousands of jobs were leaving. And so they were trying to take aggressive action to diversify at the time. And now we're in a situation where we're also in an economic crisis. And so what we're here to do is say, let's do it now. Let's not wait. Let's do it now. Let's put another leg on the stool that we can stand on, and let's start immediately. Okay, so this is what a free trade zone license is. It is quite simply, it's just a license that's issued to any business that's inside of a free trade zone can get this license. And any business inside of the free trade zone can apply for the license, except if you're an existing business that's outside of the free trade zone, you can't move into the free trade zone and try to apply for a license. So these are new businesses starting in the free trade zone. Here's the incentives. So a license can have these incentives. Exempted from payment of BGR, exempted from payment of excise tax, exempted from payment of excise tax on raw materials as well, entitled to a rebate, an additional rebate, exempted from the developer's tax, exempted from the export taxes or user fees. For those of you who are familiar with the QC, it looks a lot like a qualifying certificate. A lot like it. It's kind of a mini version. And so they can do the tax exemption, a little bit different than how the QC has been used. We don't think that the application of this, from how we've discussed, we don't think it's a good idea to give 0% taxes, to fully exempt the business from taxes that's in this. We think that you use that tax rate from 1% to 100%, that you use that tax rate as the negotiation to say, okay, wherever you are business, wherever you are Meta, what are you paying now? We'll beat it. Wherever you are, whatever you're paying, we'll be the best place for you. Tell us what you need. We'll be the best place for you. But we also have the opportunity here, and as you see, it says the tax incentives are determined at a level commensurate with economic benefit to be received by the Commonwealth. So this is also something that we haven't really done with the QC, but imagine Apple, right? So Apple goes to Ireland in 2004. They could have come here. They actually could have come here. We have the law. If we would have been sitting at the table, we could have sat and got right in front of Ireland and said, wait, what is Ireland offering you? Oh, and you're going to have all this trouble, which they have, because the U.S. isn't going to like you going over there and offshoring your income. Come and be here. Wait, what's Ireland offering you? 12.5%? We'll do 9. But do you want 7? Oh, sure, we'll take 7. Okay, laptops for every student for 25 years. Every year, laptops for every student. You're going to endow and staff a computer science course at NMC, a full computer science degree course taught by your own staff. You're going to fund it and you're going to staff it. And then you're going to hire the students from out of that. You're going to guarantee them that if they graduate from there, that they get hired at Apple. That gets you 7%. We can do it. We can do it. We can do it now. So the other great part about this and why I have it highlighted, this is another, the brilliance of it, is that all the taxes that come from these businesses are segregated into a separate account. So we can actually track it. We can actually say, did we hit the billion or not? And this account is set up very well. It goes into this account, and then, because I know that we have some legislators here who are looking at that and like, wait, well, what about that account? What are we going to do with that account? So after it's been said that there are no more rebates that need to go back to the businesses at the end of the year, into the general fund. So no limitations on what we're able to spend this money on, right? Unlike the situation that we can often run into with grants. So that's an awesome thing as well. What's a free trade zone? How do the free trade zones get created? Where are the free trade zones? Of course, right? So first off, there already is 20 hectares next to the airport that's a free trade zone. But there's no buildings there. There's roads, there's towers, there's road, there's electric, there's water, but there's nothing there. Now, however, what's awesome in this is it says the local delegations can basically pick anywhere, public or private land, and by passing a local law, they can say, this is a free trade zone. And now any business can come in there. So what we've already presented to SNAL through Rep. J.P. Sablon is we have presented to take Garapan right here with all this empty commercial, some of it absolutely beautiful to be honest, and a lot of it rehab, and say that's a free trade zone. So we've got all this empty commercial, let's fill it up with businesses that want to be here and give them this prime real estate. This is where the free trade zone is now. It's the green that's in the hash. You can go and drive through there. It's cool land, it's nice land, but there's nothing there. So if they did want to build a corporate headquarters and they wanted it next to the airport, I mean, they could do it. So the Free Trade Zone Authority, it's a public corporation. It's very simple. It's a public corporation, a lot like the other public corporations we have, CHCC, CUC. It's got a board of 9 members, 5 of whom must be from the private sector and are recommended by the Chambers of Commerce. Okay, so it's a role for the Chambers of Commerce in this case. And 4-year terms, excuse me. And of course we have the requirements for them that we must have 1 woman, 1 Carolinian member as well. We must have 1 member from each of the senatorial districts. So this is it. Public corporation. It's an unpaid board. I think that's actually really important as we've seen some of the things going on with the boards, again, to get the incentives right. So these are people who want to be there. It's unpaid. They're there for the reason of getting these licenses issued. The directors are recommended by the Chamber of Commerce, and they're appointed by the governor. So we have some senators here. These are Senate-confirmed appointees. So moving them through that process is going to be key. Again, we have 20 hectares, but the delegations can designate any land within their district. Any businesses in the FTZ can apply for the license, up to 100% taxes on all the whole range of taxes. And I think you want to lay this out in a way to where you're going to them with 1 number, right? And saying, here's your profits, we're going to take some percentage of that, this is what it is, will be anywhere. And again, the taxes are segregated into a separate account so that they can be accurately measured, which for us, as business people, and the business people out there, you know that having the metrics in your KPIs is very, very important. So that's a brilliant part of the way that this was written. Josh is going to tell you a little bit about what we do and how we relate to our goal of standing up this authority, really for the first time to be able to issue the first licenses.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'll be brief so we can get to our Q&A, but while we operate as a Chamber of Commerce, there's so much more that we see in this Trade Council. And I want to just tell you a quick story. We were first reading this legislation and unpacking it and discussing all of the opportunities and possibilities with this. And we were looking over this lagoon in awe, really, at the providence and the inspiration of the covenant, the Free Trade Zone Act, and we had a couple of questions. we asked ourselves, how is it that this place is not flourishing? I think we've talked about that. The incentives maybe aren't exactly where they need to be. And what would allow us to unify the CNMI to claim financial independence, so to speak? And we believe answers to these questions include timing, like Vin had mentioned, uniting us in not just a common vision of economic incentives, but the right vision of economic incentives, and identifying how to operate the free trade zone with a $0 budget. So that's really where this comes in. So we have this problem. The incentives are in place. We have the law. All the things are ready for us. So now how do we implement with a $0 budget? So we want to make sure that while we are implementing, we're not, causing problems in the future. It needs to be scalable and sustainable. Okay, so this is the puzzle. And the question isn't if it's possible. We wanted to take a different frame of mind and say, if we couldn't fail, what would it look like? And instead of if, how, right? And so we have this puzzle that we're trying to solve for, and we have an unpaid board, and they have a $0 budget. We have businesses that we want to have an incredible experience coming to the CNMI. We have a $0 budget. So that led to, okay, let's break this problem down into smaller parts. We got to identify the board members, people with the right vision and a moral code that will help them do what's best for the CNMI. How do we make the application process simple for the board members? So the board members don't have to spend hours and hours and hours reviewing things, right? And that would include a good process, technology, automation. Who would build the website? Who will build all the tools to keep track of things, and automations and reporting? That's maybe down the road. Who will fulfill the mandate in the law? It says that the Trade Zone Authority needs to aggressively market the CNMI as a free trade zone. With what money, right? Who will find committed ambassadors who will invest their time and resources to share the CNMI and to bring businesses, including these influencers and leaders of networks, right? So that we can bring that flood of businesses when the incentives are in place. Who's going to make sure they have a great experience when they come here, right? I think any business owners that have had to deal with some of the process of setting up a business, specifically around permitting and zoning, not to say anything negative about those organizations, it's just, that's kind of part of it can create friction, right? And so how do we help? This is another mandate in the law to expedite the permitting for businesses operating in the free trade zone. Who's going to do that? Is the board going to do that? Do they have time to do it? And once a business commits to the CNMI, who's going to help reverse the brain drain and bring our locals who are working in the States, because they're better paying jobs, and bring them back here? And who will make sure that businesses aren't frustrated and then fail to share their excitement with other businesses? Believe me, if we got Apple or Meta or even a smaller tech company here, it would be we would see exponential growth after that. If they had a good experience, they're going to share it with their CFO and CEO and C-suite friends, right? So we have to make sure that it's an incredible experience for them. So we committed, after we kind of were breaking all this down, we committed to find or to be the answer to all of those challenges and questions. And so that's where the trade zone comes in, is to solve that puzzle, right? And we believe that the collaboration, the timing, and transparency will allow us to get this right and to move quickly. So thank you so much for being here today. We believe each of you can and will have a significant impact in this. And we're gonna share a few calls to action, if you will. So the first, and Vin, you'll have to remind me if I'm forgetting any. The board needs to be recommended to the governor. Board members would be recommended to the governor. So we will be recommending board members at the end of this month. So members of chambers of commerce, anyone that would like to be a board member for the free trade zone, please let us know. Okay, chambers of commerce, you can suggest names as well. We will take this list of names to the governor at the end of this month. Please get the list of names to us by the 25th of this month. We want to move on this. We're gonna make this happen. So then we have a couple other things, including the free trade zone that we're trying to stand up here in Garrapan that we would like to stand up. So members of SNILD, you will be seeing this legislation coming to you soon. We hope that you will keep this in mind and that we don't sit on this. We get this thing moving. Vin, do you want to share a couple other calls to action?
Well, the Senate confirmation.
Oh, Senate confirmation, yes. So just remember, with these free trade zone board members, it goes to the governor and then it's confirmed in the Senate. So any members of the Senate, please be looking out for these confirmations that are coming your way. Know that the board members that Senate confirmations, they require a background check and a drug test. Shouldn't be a problem, just keep that in mind.
Any help with the Trade Council as well?
Indeed, yes. If you have any desire to help us in the Trade Council, be a part of the Trade Council, we welcome anyone that has the desire or resources, even if you just want to be advising here or there. We would welcome anyone to join the Trade Council and help us move this forward and make this happen. And that's all I can think of.
That's good.
We're going to post a slide here soon that will allow you to download the slides. It's a QR code, but we want to open this up for Q&A. If anybody has any questions or...
Well, before we do.
Oh yeah, please do, come on.
If you would indulge us, because I have a feeling that there are some folks who, and I would probably be, who are like, this sounds almost like too good to be true, what you guys are talking about, and like, where are these businesses? And perhaps you don't think, we can tell you that we've been having conversations with dozens of them, but we happen to have a special guest here. So 3 of the industries that we think are going to be the most important for this, right now, as in 2000 there were quite a few, but now we think that there are 3 big industries that we can really capitalize on because there's a lot of capital flowing into them. So one is AI, right? And one is financial services, fintech, crypto, all of that, especially with the Trump administration, which is jam-packed full of them, right? And one of the members of the PayPal mafia, David Sachs, is now for the first time in the US, we have a crypto and AI czar. So you can see that this is the direction that this administration wants to go. So those are 2 big ones. And then the third one, especially as we have the Ukraine war winding down, but the things that have happened, particularly in the last 3 years, is drones and automation, right? And this falls right into it. So we actually happen to have, some of you know Charlie Hermosa, who's the CEO of Bella Wings in Guam. He's also running for governor of Guam. But he and I have been having conversations for months, and he was here on island. If you wouldn't mind you've seen this, so in some ways, he had not seen this before, we had not talked with him. If you want to share sort of what's going on in terms of businesses looking for a place to go even with drones, please.
Yep.
And thank you so much. And actually, Vin, to be honest with you, when I saw the flyer, I actually started working on a flight to get over here. Because, one of the things that you just put up, I've dealt with FTZs for over 25 years. And one of the islands that actually is doing it really profound is Puerto Rico. And so a story that I can tell, almost in 2006, I brought a company to Puerto Rico, which I think might have been here as well, Dish Network, right? So they were bringing in all their goods from China. And so one of the things that we did in Puerto Rico was said, listen, Dish, why don't we assemble, we have a FTZ zone, our warehouse is within the FTZ zone. Can we assemble and put these things together in Puerto Rico? You don't pay any taxes at all. We'll repackage them, assemble them, and then ship them back out to any region in the world. And you don't have to pay taxes. And now you're in North America, now you're in Central America, now you're in South America. And we did that. And so we had a container full of dishes, we had a full container of remote controls, I mean, you name it, and we had a little bit of an assembly line, and we started building these boxes, we shipped them, wrapped them, put them in containers, finished goods, and went out the door. And that is like the simple way, right? What you have here, what this represents is absolutely, it's huge. It's huge for the region. If you look at what Guam is trying to do, we're actually trying to do this. But we're like in the infancy state. You guys are almost there. I mean, you have the leg. Now we just gotta be able to put the screws in, honestly. And so when you look at companies that are willing to come here, as Vin said, you know, we've had many discussions with companies out of Turkey. The one that is more closer to the finish line is with a company out of Ukraine. And so we're working out a deal with them with a turnkey solution that would allow us to assemble the drones that they're manufacturing in Ukraine, and they're willing to move it out here in this region. But the mechanism to be able to, it to be a viable option, that is what we have to look at from an economic development standpoint, because it's not just being able to create the drones and the finished product, but it's being able to educate the skill force. So we've got to be able to create that cycle. We've got to be able to create that education force at the grammar school level, high school level, and tech level, NMC level. That is going to be circular. That is exactly where we're going to get the workforce. So how we're going to look like 25 years, that is the vision. You have the vision. What are we going to look like 25 years? And it starts now. So understanding that this industry will also change within 10, 15, 20 years, AI is really going to evolve into something much bigger than it is now. Virtual reality is going to take place as well, but we have to be ready for that turn. I think we weren't really ready for the turn in the tourism market. It kind of caught us off guard, right? We thought we were going to ride this wave for a while, and it's gone. It's changed. It's completely changed. The tourism market has completely changed. So now we have to establish how we're going to look like for the next 25 years. Education, power, energy. That's the other discussion we need to have. When we start talking about data centers, when we start talking about manufacturing plants, one of the things that we see that is a high cost is power. I mean, even for our own homes. I mean, we see our power bills. So we gotta be able to do something with power. Now, as a lot of folks kind of cringe when I say this, but nuclear energy is within the works. It has to happen. There is no other way for us to be able to move forward if we don't have efficient power, cost-effective power. And it's not only for the business and manufacturing side, but it's also going to support all our communities. And then sustainability. Sustainability in the sense of, I was talking to an engineer from Singapore, and you know we were talking about all this, and we were putting everything on the map, and he stopped me and he said, Charlie, he's like, you got to give me a second. And so I thought he was going to talk about something about engineering and you know molecules, and he said, when I talk about sustainability, I talk about how are you going to feed your workforce? How are they going to eat? How are they going to sustain? How are they going to stay healthy with healthy living? Right? If we're importing all our foods, which we are pretty much 94%, you know, that's where we're at. So, in essence, this is very powerful. I mean, I think you guys have something that you can absolutely sell to the world. So, thank you so much for allowing me to take a couple of minutes and seconds, and I appreciate it. And this is absolutely great. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, bud.
Thank you very much, Joe. Questions? Oh wait, do we have questions on the
I
thing?
have one so far.
All
The
right.
Jones Act.
Okay.
So, do you or anyone know about our benefits with our exclusion of Jones Act?
So the basics of the Jones Act is it's like a cabotage thing. The basics of the Jones Act, and Charlie's someone who very much knows about the Jones Act because you're general manager of APL, right? So an APL, and Guam has kind of an exemption, right, from the Jones Act, but not a full exemption, right? So The Jones Act basically says that if you want to move goods between U.S. ports, they have to be on a U.S. flag ship. Right? That's the fundamentals of it. We're exempt from that, which is very, very important for the idea that if we have goods that are coming from China, and as Charlie says, they come and they're assembled here, we can put it right back on that Chinese ship, and then it keeps on going. So that's why Guam gets eaten up by the cost of shipping, right? It's crazy expensive. So that's a very important thing for us, and for when we start to talk about manufacturing and assembly, very, very important with the Jones Act. And again, it's like it's a superpower. It's part of the superpowers.
That's the only one on here.
Any questions?
Can I just-
Please, yeah.
So in line with the Jones Act also, the other part that is huge is the infrastructure. Because even if you had the Jones Act or you didn't have the Jones Act, if you think about the infrastructure of the port that we have, there's only a certain size of ship that can come in. So even if you wanted to bring the largest shipping company in the world, it can't fit. So it kind of mutes the point sometimes when we start discussing it. But you do have an exemption on the Jones Act, which is huge compared to Guam. But the infrastructure is a huge deal on them, and that's something that has to be addressed as well.
And I think that's the reason why, we think that we can hit $1 billion without going to any companies to manufacture anything, right? When we look at these top companies, like, Meta builds like their Oculus thing, and Apple does build iPhones, but they don't build them in Ireland, right? Apple's staff in Ireland isn't building iPhones. It's all built in China, right? So what we're looking for is to get the staff out here, the highly trained staff, right? And so I think really the most important thing, if there's no questions, thank you very much. There are, okay, yes, please. I thought there would.
All right. I hear a lot of benefits and it sounds pretty promising. Have you guys any study or analyzed the pitfalls that this FTZ brings to Ireland?
Oh, to
Yeah,
Ireland?
to Ireland, and possibly we might face.
I have. Do you have anything on this?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So Ireland actually is trying to diversify away from this corporate
There you go.
tax revenue. They don't necessarily love it. It's not as stable as they would like it to be. But for us in the CNMI, we're not talking about $24 billion. We're talking about $500 million or $1 billion. That would be a game changer for us. So anything above a few $100 million is incredible. And so there likely won't be the same negative impact. For them, a fluctuation of $4 or $5 billion is a problem. For us, if we're dealing with $1 billion, a fluctuation of a few $100 million, we're still working with house money. So that's a great question.
I mean, I think there's probably.
Did you have more?
Well, if I could, I think we have thought about this, and in terms of living here, I think here's the things that we need to be careful of as this thing builds, right? If it's a gradual build, then I don't think we'll hit any problems. The problem, and this is what you call a champagne problem, that's the term that I use, when you hockey stick. So if we really get the incentives right, and it's basically what we call product market fit. That's the time when you don't do any more marketing, right? You just open your business, and it's like Ina's Kitchen, right? It's like you open your business, you just have the best burger on the island, and all of a sudden, well, we don't have room for the line, right? Like people are going out, we don't have enough tables. Well, our space is too small. We didn't think we were going to be this big. And that's really the problem when we hockey stick, right? If we had 1,000 workers, I think we'd be okay, right? If we had 10,000 people who all needed housing, and it was like within 1 year, and there wasn't time for the housing market to catch up with making that housing available, are these people living in hotels? Like, what's the situation? So this is what you would call a champagne problem, I think. But it is something to think about as we move forward. Infrastructure. This is always a question that people ask, right? Infrastructure. This is not a problem with this, right? We're talking about, we've got the chamber saying we need to bring in 250,000 tourists or whatever. No, we're not. Well, the tourists are eating up way more of the infrastructure, So if we can support 250,000 tourists, we can support 1,000 guys sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day in an office in Garapan, right? It's not, this is one of the things where this is not gonna hurt the aquifer. This is not going to use up our bandwidth. Tourists do that way more, right? This is not gonna foul the oceans. It's actually, you would rather have 1,000 of these guys than 1,000 tourists any day, right? So, because we can handle that, that piece is okay. But I do really think that housing, as I look at it, you know, our housing stock, there's a lot of places that can be rehabilitated. There's a lot of places that I think if there were people wanting it, it would be good, but you worry about housing costs go up, right, in that situation.
So again, that brings up the concept of digital residency, similar, and try to do it as a digital corporation or some form of that aspect, and that way we try to not over, you know.
Do you want to talk about
Well,
what and what they're
Yeah, so most of these companies, this is a good point. Most of these companies would actually like to bring as few workers here as possible, right? They want to bring as few possible so that they can legally source the income. So I don't think we need to worry about them wanting to send workers here, right? But they're going to need to send some amount so that they can actually source the income. Because we can't do, unfortunately, with US law being the way it is, the control that we don't have, since we mirror the IRS, is we don't have the control to say, like a Vanuatu, okay, you don't actually have to come here, just register your business here and pay your taxes here and you don't have to come, right? So they actually do have to have some staff here, yeah.
And again, the infrastructure of our island, right?
Yeah,
We won't
yeah.
be able to sustain it at the current moment, so we have to kind of prioritize who we're trying to invite first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still, the infrastructure, I think that this is an important point because it's something that, as we've had these discussions, I think a lot of people get stuck on is how much infrastructure a tech worker uses. And it's actually like a lot less than, I'll give you an example. When I work from home, my 9-year-old who's on her, watching YouTube, my 9-year-old who's playing Roblox, my 5-year-old watching YouTube, and my wife on a FaceTime call is using 1,000 times more bandwidth and infrastructure than I'm using working in my office writing code, right? So it's basically no infrastructure in that regard.
However, I was seeing that clause, that little clause in that provision. It was also stating financial and trade services as
Yes,
well.
yes.
So if we do also consider, those forms of businesses, we
Yeah.
also want to invite them as well. So that
Oh, yeah.
that portion, I understand with the tech part, but
Yeah.
we're not necessarily just going to single out the tech industry.
Well, they are tech companies for the most part now, right? Financial companies for the most part are technology companies in this day and age. And the ones you're talking about exchanges online, brokerage firms. I mean, these are tech. That's what I do, right? So these are fundamentally software companies. When you go and you log into your TV administrator or whatever. So it's all of it. Anybody who can come, we'd like them to come.
But with our component, with our exemption from the Jones Act,
Yeah.
it gives that great opportunity. So we're not necessarily going to just limit to the tech.
I mean, it would be great
We
if.
also want to encourage.
Sure.
that
Sure.
opportunity to grow.
Sure, and it's non-exclusive, right? If companies want to come in and they want to do it, yeah, absolutely. I think, Paul, Zach, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering on the Jones Act,
Yeah.
that's on vessels only, or does that include aircraft?
Oh, I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Charlie, do you know Jones Act? Is that sea vessels only or aircraft as well?
So the Jones Act, see the cabotage is for.
Cabotage is the.
Air.
Yeah, what I'm saying, if you get an airplane, can you go to multiple jurisdictions in the United States delivering cargo?
From here?
Yeah,
Yeah, sure. In the United States?
yeah, under the Jones Act,
Oh, no. If it's a foreign plane, you can't because of cabotage.
right?
It's just basically the same. So we don't have an exemption to the cabotage. They're trying to get, I think that there's a big movement to get an exemption from the cabotage, and I think Guam is working on it too, right? But right now, we don't have it. India?
How do you control for companies that you don't want coming to CNMI?
Very good question. So the question is, how do you control for companies that you don't want coming to CNMI? That's fundamentally the role of the authority, right? So these packages are presented to the authority, And that's their decision. It's not only, every one of these licenses is fundamentally bespoke, and they have the final say. And one of the things that we've committed to doing is to assisting in that, especially in the initial phases, is assisting in giving them, robust background checks so that we're able to come to the table, as having done the market research on these particular companies and to present, and even our opinion, we think this is a good idea or not a good idea, but to provide those kind of services for them as well. Adele.
I think one of the things that would be critical for us is corporations and businesses want stability. They don't want all of a sudden the legislature and the government needs more money, so we're gonna throw new fees, new taxes. Let's try this, no, it has to be consistent, it has to be long-lasting, because, and then what happens is, if they come and all of a sudden they have all these other things hitting them with, I mean, in the day, we did great. We could say, you wanna come to CNMI, build this roads in Cagman, put in power, do all. We're not there. Now we're beggars. And that's kind of a global thing. It's now incentivized by, this is an incentive. Please come here. This is what we'll give you. And so one of the questions I will ask regarding the negotiated tax payment is, what will that do for legality? Where now, see, back in the day when we had the QC, all of a sudden we had local businesses that said, that's not fair, you're giving an incentive here. That's the same discussion with the airlines. How come this and you're not giving an incentive here? This one now has an advantage over this one. They can lower their prices, they can beat them fairly, and they're being supported by the government to do so. So how would you address that from a legal or a legislative move, so we're not having lawsuits come at us?
Yeah, you can add to this, the authority, the Free Trade Zone Authority would be reviewing and essentially making a contract. That's what the Free Trade Zone license is. And so clauses, protections in there can be written and drafted.
That doesn't stop lawsuits.
So if I can restate your question just to make sure I understand it, what's to prevent businesses from having an expectation when they come here and then somehow the CNMI goes back on the deal?
No, it's, wait a minute, XY got this rate, we got this rate, that's not fair, we want that rate.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, it's stipulated in the law that businesses that are currently in the CNMI cannot relocate into the free trade zone, which doesn't fix the problem that you're bringing up. I don't necessarily see that there's a solution other than picking businesses whose client base is not here. If
Well,
the
our
business's
incentive
client
is-
base is outside the US,
Our
then
incentive is, how do we bring people here? So we sit and complain about, it's not fair. Well, no, wait a minute, you've been here, you're established. Do you want more business ability, more taxes? This is what we have to look at.
yeah.
Well, if I could, I think this is where we get into second order effects, right? So having these companies come here, having them source income here, is if we have the workers here, obviously, and they're spending money, every business is gonna benefit from that, right? On the other hand, if we have this as our source of income, actually, this is the point at which businesses that exist here can start to actually lobby. If we had $1 billion that was coming in from foreign businesses, I would think it would be very reasonable for local businesses to start lobbying and saying, well, why don't we just eliminate taxes, period? Why don't you just give every business that's here, because you're not collecting much from us. We represent 5% of the total amount that you're taking in, then we can have a real discussion about tax reform of businesses that are outside, that are local businesses that are here, right? And I think actually this is the only way for us to get to that point. The only way for us to get to that point is we need to have more money than we can spend, right?
Basically, when money's coming out into the CNMI, small business basically complements, and succeed. Because I rather have somebody coming into the CNMI of course, take advantage of enticing them to invest. At the same time, when they do invest, small business basically will benefit because more people coming in, more money coming in. There's going to be, more customers, more clienteles and stuff like that. So that's the incentive for our local small business to have. So now, the other thing I wanted to ask is that we talk about infrastructure, broadband, Now, this basically makes sense because like 5 or 6 years ago, we only won ISP, which is IT&E, right? And you guys heard what happened when IT went down, we're in the dark. Now, I'm so happy that Docomo came into place. But you know what, basically, the thing that's gonna really complement this a whole lot is Google broadband will be coming into place. So now I'm starting to see that there's a big business opportunity coming into the CNMI with a new industry, and all small business will basically benefit. I have no problem, getting that tax incentives, because when they bring in workers and when they bring in money, it kind of fuels my business as a restaurant, barbershop, all the small local business will basically benefit. Bars and whatnot. So it makes sense for money to come in, because right now the small business cannot sustain the economy itself, because there's no business. How are we going to pay tax?
Yeah, and I think on the note of the new cable coming in with Google, and this is something that I was speaking about with Charlie to get to his point about nuclear, which is incredibly important, and I'm glad that he brought up, is we could put a free trade zone. The Tinian local delegation can designate that area around the cable landing, and they very much should, as a free trade zone. And right now there is billions. I mean, Trump just did a press conference and he brought a guy up who's going to do $20 billion in investment in building data centers. Well, Google needs to build a data center there. They need to, right? And not just Google, but probably Meta as well, and some other companies, and just data center companies, because it's a great location right in between. It's a great location to put your servers for any cloud. Amazon for AWS would definitely build it. And guess what? Right now, all of the new data centers going in, they're powering them with small-scale nuclear. So Meta actually has an RFP out to try to find which company is going to be the one that's going to supply it with small-scale nuclear. So what did you just do? You just solved Tinian's power forever. Right? So you tell them, yeah, you build it, but it's got to be this capacity, and you've got to supply power to all the people of Tinian for free for the next 20 years. And that's just the latent power that they have coming off their small-scale nuclear reactor in the data center. Right? So it's these types of things that where we, not only do we look at the businesses for what the businesses are, but we look at the businesses for what's the additional thing that that business has that we need. Right? So like I was talking about, if it's an Apple, if it's an equipment manufacturer, then we say, yeah, give it to all the kids in the school every year. If it's the nuclear, we say, power the island. And they get a little bit different. Yeah.
I like the word, build it and they will
build it and they will come. There you go. Yes, absolutely. Lori?
Yeah, so this authority, the law for this authority has existed for 20 years, and you mentioned that there's a timing issue.
Yes.
How is that authority overseen from any of the government side? Is it completely autonomous? What is the likelihood of either interference or stagnation for lack of authorization?
So the law charters a public corporation, which is a form that we use. It's actually pretty novel. I don't know too many jurisdictions in the U.S. that use it as often as we do. But basically, like CHCC, CUC, the public school system is also a public corporation here, right? So it can be self-sufficient, so it can charge fees for the licenses. The idea, and what we would like to see, is a situation where that authority is self-sufficient. But it is able to go to the legislature and to present a budget and ask for a budget, right? So there is oversight on the budget side for the legislature to say, no, we're not going to supply you with any money. It does not have a lot of statutory powers. The only power that it has is the power to issue licenses and the mandate to market those licenses. That's all it has. It doesn't have the capability to declare a free trade zone, although it is allowed to work with CPA if it's CPA land to create a free trade zone on CPA land. Otherwise, the creation of free trade zones is completely up to the local delegations. It's completely in their power. Right? And they don't get to themselves appropriate any of the tax money that comes in from these businesses. Again, it goes straight into the hands of the Secretary of Finance in a separate account, and then it goes into the general fund where it can be appropriated by the legislature. So they don't have any, when we declare a free trade zone, I think I'm kind of getting an idea of where you're going. When a free trade zone is declared, it doesn't give, the Free Trade Zone Authority doesn't have any new statutory authority over the land, over the businesses there, or over anything. The only thing that it does is it enables a business within that area to be issued a license. So in that way, it's very much like a zoning. It's a new zoning board, right? So you could put, it's industrial, we've got industrial, commercial, residential, and free trade zone, right?
To the point that I was actually getting at was less about the perhaps runaway power concept as opposed to the styminess that we see with something like the zoning board or the PUC, whatever they call that, where it's been stuck, it was declared and it was created, but we can't make it work.
Yep.
So what makes it possible that this works and that doesn't?
That's why we're here, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question, and honestly, I think the answer to that doesn't sit with us. I think that's the responsibility of everyone in the CNMI, but I love the question because we will have to look out for that. We're gonna have to, that's part of why we created the Trade Council, is to keep it moving forward, right? But at the end of the day, the buck stops with the board. And so the good thing is that it's required that 5 of the 9 board members are from the private sector. And I think they did that intentionally because not that our public sector doesn't understand business, but the private sector, that is their bread and butter, right? And so they will have the business mind to realize the benefit of this. And I think it really comes down to appointing the board members who have the CNMI's best interest at heart. But to answer your question, I don't think we have the answer to that, other than that's why we created the Trade Council, to try and prevent that from happening.
As I understand it, one board was stood up, right? And but no licenses were issued. And again, I said because of the timing. So I think really we're in a situation where we're all complaining about the situation that the economy is in, right? So let's put our money where our mouth is. Instead of complaining about it, let's put you on the board. Be at every meeting. Come in with, having researched all of these companies, like here's the pathway. And instead of me saying, let's do it. In the meantime, Josh and I are here, and we've asked you all to come here, and thank you for being here, because we've committed ourselves to being the answer. As Josh said, we're either going to find the answer or we're going to be the answer. So while, yes, it is good that it does lie with everyone in the CNMI, we know how things really work, and not everyone in the CNMI is going to participate in this, right? But there are 2 people who we are standing in front of you and holding ourselves accountable for this, is that we will, and Mike as well. I've voluntold you on this. Mike has been a very helpful advisor, but yes, all of us, we will be there. We will be there to push it forward. And I hope that all of you hold us accountable too. So I hope that when you see us on the street, if there hasn't been any motion on this thing, that you stop us and you say, where's it at? What's going on? Yeah.
What might?
Oh, wait,
we have
hold
Joe
on, we
in
have
the
Joe in the
back,
back.
and then Dale, we'll get you next.
Okay.
After Josh and Vin.
Here you go.
Michael. First off, I'm going to put my Cypress Chamber of Commerce hat. Congratulations to the Trade Council. This is awesome. I got excited when I saw the flyer. I know a little bit about the free trade zone. I moved back from the States in 2001. When it was starting, I had chats with Carl Ridges, who was the first administrator of the zoning board. So received funding from the legislature, and then I think for the first 2 years, and after that it was defunded, and it closed, and the effort, and the timing wasn't right, which you mentioned earlier. But this is great stuff. This is great that it's sort of like a grassroots from business people to create this discussion and move this agenda forward. About a year ago, Zach cornered me, called Zach, and gave me all the law and all the regulations, and had this really sort of vision for this. I'm really pleased to see that, you know, some younger folks are taking this on. Paul, you're probably ready for retirement again, but it's nice to see that you're taking on this effort. So thank you on behalf of the Cyber Chamber of Commerce, and we'll be working together to get this going.
And we would love to see, we'd love to see that, I know there's some chamber members, we'd love to see those names of people that you want on the board. And yeah, either, I mean, we'll take them, or obviously you guys could take them because you are a chamber. So obviously the more the better, and we just want to get these guys seated and get them working and get that first license, you know, get from 0 to 1. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much. Del, yeah.
One of my concerns is whenever you start talking about something not on merit-based, and when everything becomes, oh, you have to choose from this, you have to choose from that, the government chooses.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing that for years. It doesn't work very well. You're getting people that have no concept or competency or understanding of the board they've now been because of political payoffs or whatever nonsense. And that bothers me when I see that. Instead of finding who are the most competent people, it doesn't matter their race, their ethnicity, or their sex. It has to be their competency and their drive to do it. Because if it doesn't come together with this, I'm excited, I can do it, I have avenues, I have connections, but if it comes with someone who says, well, I just was a grade school teacher and I don't know anything about business. Well, I'm sorry, why are you here? You shouldn't even be here if you don't have a drive, interest, or understanding, or a way to move it forward through, I know somebody here, I know somebody there, and the idea to get something behind it. So is this legislation that has to be done through, well then I think that's a huge mistake.
Well, so Del, if I may, so the legislation is done. There's no legislation that needs to be passed. Like, this is done. This is the law, right?
Well, I'm referring to the board.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the board. So the board needs to have, so by the law, by the statute, the board needs to have, the bare minimum we could do would be 5 members of the board. Okay? This is, I'm going to tell you the bare minimum. All those 5 members would have to be from the private sector, because you have to have a minimum of 5 board members from the private sector. A quorum is 5 members, right? So that means that in order for you to have your meetings, you need to have 5 members. Also, in order for any license to be approved or any action to be taken, it takes the concurrence of 5 members. So that would mean if you had a minimum of 5 members, they would all have to be from the private sector. They would all have to show up. They would all have to agree and have a consensus if you had this minimum board, right, on any action that was taken. And by statute, by CNMI statute, one of them has to be from Saipan or the Northern Islands, one of them has to be from Tinian, one of them has to be from Rhoda, one of them has to be Carolinian, and one of them has to be a woman, right? Now, in terms of, because this is an unpaid board, unlike many of the other boards, there is no advantage to being on this board. It's just work. It's not going to get you anything except work, more work than you have. So that's a great filter to start. There's no salary for this. You don't get paid. It doesn't help. I mean, if you have a political friend and they appoint you, they're not doing you a favor, right? They're just basically saying, hey, now you need to start going to some meetings instead of, being wherever you otherwise would have been. So it's a great filter in that regard. And the other thing is, all 5 of those members would have had to have been recommended by a Chamber of Commerce, right? So the governor can't appoint the private sector members, and the majority of them are private sector. And so we began a Chamber of Commerce to answer your exact question. And that's why we're here, is that we're looking for people who are actually, we're saying filter yourself. Actually be competent. Actually say, I want to do this. Actually be passionate about it. We'll put your name on a list and take it to the governor. And I think that the other chambers will do that as well. And we can stand it up like that. If we get 4 other people who are appointed by the governor for whatever reason, whatever, right? You're still going to have, at all times, the majority of this under this very nice filter. And that's one very nice thing I think about this law. So I hope that addressed some of your concern, because it's a valid concern, but I think that this law lays it out in a very nice way to filter that out.
Now, the law is for the free trade zone.
Yes.
The Trade Council, the Marianas, is separate. That's
Yes, that's our nonprofit. Yes.
And what you're trying to do with this nonprofits, you're trying to help steer and develop the free trade zone.
We want to be the solution to the $0 budget. Because fundamentally, what is the budget for, right? It's to hire support staff for the most part. You know, put up a website, do these sorts of things, do the marketing, get in contact with people, have the staff in your office. So as a nonprofit, in order to stand this thing up, in order to get them on their feet and bootstrap them, what we've committed to is we will be that staff. We will be that staff to get this thing up and running, right? And you might be asking, like, well, what's in it for you? Why would you guys want to do something like this, right? So one of my first business mentors told me, if you want to make $1 million, you got to make somebody else $1 million first. Right? This is major movie and television producer in Los Angeles, right? And so this is the thing. Whenever I see an opportunity, if I see an opportunity where I can make somebody $1 billion, I'm pretty sure that in the course of making somebody $1 billion, that I'm going to be okay. Pretty sure I can figure that out. I'm a smart enough guy. I'll figure out how to get my $1 million out of that by hook or by crook. Right? So it's not pure altruism. We are definitely doing this because we're in this industry. If we bring more people from this industry here, and they're going to need a lot of stuff, and they're going to need somebody to provide that stuff for them, and we're here and we know how to get them that stuff. Right? So full disclosure, lay it out on the table. We're trying to bring $1 billion, and in the process, we're trying to make some money at it too, right? But in order for us to do that, we got to stand this trade council up, and we got to get a whole bunch of businesses here first, right? And we get paid least and last, and in some other way besides this, because it's a nonprofit, right?
Go ahead, another question over here.
I can sympathize what Dale's mentioning. I understand that. The thing is that the trade council, can it become like a sort of like a lobbyist in the event that we need to correct things or make things happen or change or whatnot?
Yeah, it's non-exclusive as a Chamber of Commerce, non-exclusive membership, right? And so in that way, if you want to make a difference and the Trade Council has influence with and can help steer the authority, then be a member of the Trade Council and help steer the authority in the way that you want it to be steered.
I mean, legal disclaimer, there are some limitations based upon our tax exempt status in terms of when we start talking about lobbying, right? So there are some things that we can't do based on our status, but in terms of, when it comes to particular pieces of legislation or particular candidates who are running. But in terms of a general vision, being in support of a general vision, that's definitely something that we can do. And certainly as private citizens, we can certainly do things, and we would hope that we could help.
I'm talking about if there's some obstacles that's kind of on the way, like,
Yeah.
to kind of move this forward.
You're saying with the authority, if there's an obstacle there,
Yeah,
trying to remove that obstacle.
It's like something is stopped,
Yeah.
you need to make some changes and whatnot.
Yeah.
It has to make sense for everybody to as well. The other thing is, what are the terms of the board on the
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
4 years. They're supposed to have staggered
That's
terms.
yeah.
We're going to figure out what that is because it says just for the initial board, but there's already been a board. So we're going to have to figure that out probably with the AG to say, how is this supposed to work? But it's supposed to be 4-year terms. Yeah.
And you can repeat terms.
And you can repeat. You can be reappointed over and over. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just have one last question, if it's okay.
Sure.
I imagine in doing this work that you've spoken with potential applicants. Can we just tame expectations a little bit? Is there a line at the door right now? Do you have a list of people ready to go if the board were to be impaneled tomorrow?
Okay, so so to be quite honest with you, it's yes and no. There has been a line out the door for quite some time, and I've been registering businesses and bringing businesses in over the last year. However, actually, the bottleneck that we currently have, and it's one reason that I'm hoping that we can stand up the authority, and the authority, with their authority, can start to move around and talk to some of the stakeholders. Believe it or not, our biggest bottleneck right now of companies coming, they want to register, is actually our banks. As any business person knows, there's basically, when you start a new business, it's a pretty straightforward thing. You go and get your business formation, you get your business license, and then you head right on over to the bank and you get you a bank account. Like, that's how it works. Every business person knows it. Our banks will not open a bank account if someone is not on island. Now, our government has it completely figured out. That, because you could do a certificate of certificate of authority for a foreign business. So you could have a Delaware corporation. I could go and register it right now. I could go down to the business licensing department, get them a business license, go to zoning. Zoning will clear them for business license and banking purposes. So we've got it figured out at the government level. So, but now what? The principals aren't on island. So instead of us playing a game of like, well, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? I've got a business. If I have a business and it's registered in CNMI and it's got a bank account in CNMI, the likelihood of me doing business in CNMI is a lot higher than if I don't have that full thing, right? And it's not that our banks can't do it; they absolutely can. And there are plenty of banks that are just online banks nowadays, right? Our business, Marianas Corp, is just now setting up an account with Wells Fargo, and we've never left the island, right? But our banks won't do it.
It's a local policy from those banks.
That's all it is. It's local policy from those banks, and there's been no pressure from anyone to change it. I've tried to go and do it myself over the last year, but it's just me as an individual, and who is this guy? He has no. But it's going to be different when the Free Trade Zone Authority, and they have a mandate to do this, to help these businesses, right? It's going to be very different when a government agency is going and talking to them. And I think we had for a minute the Commerce Secretary here. That would have been something for her to hear, because she is the banking director. So hopefully we can get her the recording of this. Yeah, I think Lori, did you?
Well, I'm just wondering if that issue has to do with the Patriot Act and the fact
No.
that CNMI is not a state.
No. No, I've had the meetings with them, and honestly, this is, at least this is what I heard from John Arroyo at Bank of Saipan, is that because it's like a chicken and egg, because they aren't supporting those companies, they haven't bought or changed their KYC and AML, which is Know Your Customer Anti-Money Laundering, their background check software. They only have it to service here, and that it would cost more per month for a subscription to do it, to actually clear these people. And since they don't have it and there's nobody trained on it, they can't do it, right? But there's a lot of solutions out there. We're in the year 2025. The solutions for doing KYC, AML, you can do a full check globally for $1 a person. It's just a matter of the will, right? And it's just, there's no will to do it.
You know, the thing about the banking, is, I don't know if it's a commerce policy or whatnot, but I think when you talk about the bottom, this is what I'm trying to say, is that a simple legislation can solve that issue.
Sure.
You know,
I think the banking director could probably do it just by bringing them in
pretty much.
and just probably telling them to do it.
And you're right, I can apply a bank account on my phone right now.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world.
Right, and did you go to the location where you opened it? No, see? So it's like totally common, but none of our banks will do it, even for a business that has a mailbox here, a business license here, is registered by the government here, and all of that, our banks still won't do it. So these are the little hurdles, right, for us to get over. But having the authority there, that's their job to do it, is going to make a big difference. I think we don't want to keep you guys.
I have a question.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you for your hookup for this free trade zone idea. So I have a question. So right now you have a goal and target for the Carapang set up the free trade zone there. In case the future have something more bigger company coming there, like for the factory, the products or something, you know. So the other location, example like Apollo, Middle, other Sipolo, Sipo area. So any conflict with the right now you set up in Canada?
Yeah. So the delegation can designate any area. So we've presented some legislation, but anybody could take, so I think, look, if DFS leaves, we're probably gonna wanna turn that into we're probably gonna wanna designate that a free trade zone. And that is potentially a great corporate headquarters for a big company, right? But I think that it also goes for a lot of different areas. And so that's something for business owners, if you have a company that's coming in, I think the thing to do is to move that through the Free Trade Zone Authority, right? To bring that company in, bring them to the Free Trade Zone Authority, get them to sort of pre-approve and say, this is good, say, this is the location we wanna have, and then take that legislation to the local delegation, and then they can pass it. It's like a one-sentence law. They just say, we designate this lot, this parcel to be a free trade zone, right? Very easy for them to do. So there's nothing preventing it. Technically, they could make the entire island.
So no limitation how many locations?
No, it could be, they could make the entire district a free trade zone if they wanted to.
Because this law is a new, each is more than 20 years,
Yeah.
but it's for us, whereas it's just
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we do not just like before like casino license or the one license.
Yep.
So we worry about that. So set up for the caravan, so we limit and it's really crowded.
No,
traffic.
it's unlimited.
If for the factory, something they need more space,
Mhm.
the container, the parking,
Yep.
the warehouse. Because
Yep.
of course, they need the most big space. You know. So
Yeah, and you have the 20 hectares by the airport already,
Yeah,
right? So that's already there by the airport, but again, if there's, so for instance, I know Michael's got warehouses, right? So if some business was to come in and say, we wanna do this warehouse, we've got the local delegation, the Saipan local delegation, you take it to them and say, hey, we wanna do it. And if the Free Trade Zone Authority is behind it and they wanna issue the license, then you're gonna have the help from them, yeah.
You just like everybody company to be a grant of free.
There you go, well, let's see, yeah.
Yeah, with tariffs, who knows, who knows?
Let's see. So I think that's it. Let's close it out.
If you want to chat with us after, you can reach us on our website, trade.np. And thank you very much for being here. Thanks for your time and attention. I hope it was worth your while. And please submit or nominate yourself if you want to be nominated to be a Free Trade Zone board member. Thank you.